My girlfriend wants me to sleep with her twin sister. So I am in this very bizarre situation right now. I've been dating this amazing girl for a little over 2 years and it's been an absolute blast. She's attractive, cheerful, kind, and supportive. We have a great relationship. She also happens to have an identical twin and they are pretty close. They've been staying together here since they started university. They go to different universities though. They are a bit different personality-wise, but the twin is also a very kind girl and we get along pretty well. Naturally we all hang out together very often and I am pretty comfortable with both of them. I think of her twin as my own sister in a way. Anyway, the twin was dating this guy, 30M, for almost a year. I never particularly liked him, I thought he was an arrogant prick, but I tolerated him when we all hung out together for drinks once in a while. Well, turns out I was correct. He was cheating on her with his ex and they eventually broke up. This was 6 months ago. Needless to say that the girl was devastated. She took it very hard. She became kinda depressed and her self-esteem and self-worth weren't doing that great. The fact that it was her first relationship didn't help either, I guess. She started not wanting to go out that much. We tried to do our best to drag her out of course to see and meet new people and why not even hook up with someone. I even tried to set her up with one of my friends, who was single at the time and honestly a great guy overall, but no bueno. And it's not only us. Her own friends also tried to help her, but she just won't cooperate. She says she wants to meet nice guys, yet she is always bitchy and whiny about it, never liking anyone. She keeps comparing them to that prick. Simultaneously she keeps whining and saying she is not pretty enough and other crap like that, which is not even remotely true, but no matter how many times we tell her she just won't believe it. Now I know she is feeling pretty down about the whole thing and I understand that and don't hate her, but I'd be lying if I said I didn't find it annoying, because it started affecting our relationship. My girlfriend always worries about her and tries to help her a little too much, they proceed to fight and then my girlfriend takes it out on me. And we're not even at the good part yet. So yesterday my girlfriend was staying at my place. We had intimacy and afterwards we were lying down talking. You know the usual stuff. Until she says she wants to ask me for a big favor. I am sure. Then proceeds to tell me she'd like me to have intimacy with her sister. At first, like any sane man, I thought that either she was joking or that I fell asleep and was dreaming I was starring in one of those porn movies with twins. Sadly she wasn't joking at all and I was wide awake. She probably realized I had a what the F look on my face and then proceeded to rationalize it. She told me that her twin already had a slight crush on me and at the moment I am probably the only guy she truly trusts. She said she thinks it will greatly improve her sister's self-esteem and mood. She told me she already talked about it with her twin and the twin was okay with it. She reassured me multiple times she won't get mad about it and she won't even be present. She could just stay at my place while I go to theirs and do the deed. It will only be one time and I could just pretend her sister was her, she said. Hell, I don't even have to take the whole thing seriously, I just need to have intimacy with her sister and then hold her tightly for a bit so that she feels wanted and desired and crap like that. She was practically begging me to bang her sister. Meanwhile I was standing there listening to her without being able to utter a word, that was how surprised I was. In the end I said I'll think about it for a bit and left it at that. I couldn't effing sleep that night. That was yesterday. Today I'm kinda avoiding my girlfriend, we texted a bit and thank God she hasn't mentioned anything about it. Yet. I am freaking out. Twin threesome jokes aside, I don't think this is normal. She was talking about it like it was nothing. The intimacy itself is probably not such a big deal for me, I mean they look almost exactly the same and I am pretty comfortable with her twin, but I think if I accept it can potentially ruin our relationship. She says she won't get mad, but I heavily doubt it, and I also heavily doubt it will help her sister, unless something suspicious is going on that I am not aware of. Also, I am afraid that if I have intimacy with the twin, not only things might get really awkward between the three of us, but the twin might later get jealous and start sabotaging our relationship. My girlfriend was pretty serious about the whole thing though, she looked like she really wanted me to do it. I am having some really dark thoughts right now. Perhaps the twin is manipulating her and is taking advantage of my girlfriend and me. Perhaps my girlfriend is weirder than usual. I feel guilty having such thoughts for two girls I hold in high regard. Oh man, I effing have no clue what to do. I am thinking of suggesting that we get her to therapy to feel better or something. I've talked about this with 2 of my friends, but the F-seekers just won't take the situation seriously. I am getting paranoid at this point, but I just don't want to ruin this nice thing I have with my girlfriend, that's all. Would I be the a-hole if I implemented the same rules regarding food that my mom enforced upon me when growing up? My mom is coming to see me in 2 weeks, for the first time since I started university. Just for some context, my family moved abroad a year ago and I haven't seen any of them since. The distance has given me time to reflect on some of my mother's strange, obsessive behaviors regarding food, and I've since realized that some of her actions were somewhat abusive, however I use this term very lightly. To outline the situation, we were never allowed to take food from the kitchen without asking. If we were caught doing so, it was called stealing and we would be shouted at and are sometimes punished. It escalated at some point to locks being placed on the cupboards, a transparent meat lock being placed in the fridge and a camera being installed in the kitchen. She would monitor how many times a day I'd be in the kitchen. If I had been in the too many times she would chastise me, saying that I'm obsessed with food, obsessed with always being in the kitchen and that I have serious food issues. During secondary school, I was never sent to school with packed lunch, nor was any money put on my card so that I could buy food. At some point I started to cook the family dinners, and the leftovers would always be allocated to my stepdad, whilst the rest of us would go to school with nothing. We would sometimes get takeaways for dinner, but oftentimes my mom and stepdad got takeaway only for themselves, saying that we weren't allowed any. Now, the instance in which I could possibly be the a-hole is that I plan to treat my mom as she treated me in regards to food when she visits. I told my boyfriend of my plan to enforce these rules, that there will be a curfew for the kitchen, that she is not allowed to take or eat food without permission, and if she does so I will call her a thief. I was also thinking of ordering food for myself and telling her that she's not allowed any. I honestly just want to show her how ridiculous she is about food, but at the same time I just want to be petty because why not? My boyfriend is telling me that I'd be immature for doing this, and that since my relationship with her is already difficult, I'd be better off taking the high road rather than adding fuel to the flames. My dad and sister also agree. Whilst I can't deny that doing this would be immature, I can't help but feel that she deserves a taste of her own medicine. So would I be the a-hole? My mom, 40F, is coming to see me, 19F, in 2 weeks, for the first time since I started university. Just for some context, my family moved abroad a year ago and I haven't seen any of them since. The distance has given me time to reflect on some of my mother's strange, obsessive behaviors regarding food, and I've since realized that some of her actions were somewhat abusive. However, I use this term very lightly. To outline the situation, we were never allowed to take food from the kitchen without asking. If we were caught doing so, it was called stealing and we would be shouted at and are sometimes punished. It escalated at some point to locks being placed on the cupboards, a transparent meat lock being placed in the fridge and a camera being installed in the kitchen. She would monitor how many times a day I'd be in the kitchen. If I had been in the too many times she would chastise me, saying that I'm obsessed with food, obsessed with always being in the kitchen and that I have serious food issues. During secondary school, I was never sent to school with packed lunch, nor was any money put on my card so that I could buy food. At some point I started to cook the family dinners, and the leftovers would always be allocated to my stepdad, whilst the rest of us would go to school with nothing. We would sometimes get takeaways for dinner, but oftentimes my mom and stepdad got takeaway only for themselves, saying that we weren't allowed any. Now, the instance in which I could possibly be the a-hole is that I plan to treat my mom as she treated me in regards to food when she visits. I told my boyfriend of my plan to enforce these rules, that there will be a curfew for the kitchen, that she is not allowed to take or eat food without permission, and if she does so I will call her a thief. I was also thinking of ordering food for myself and telling her that she's not allowed any. I honestly just want to show her how ridiculous she is about food, but at the same time I just want to be petty because why not? My boyfriend is telling me that I'd be immature for doing this, and that since my relationship with her is already difficult, I'd be better off taking the high road rather than adding fuel to the flames. My dad and sister also agree. Whilst I can't deny that doing this would be immature, I can't help but feel that she deserves a taste of her own medicine. So would I be the a-hole? Lost the ring my fiancé proposed to me with and I feel so guilty. A year ago, we were discussing marriage and things. His stance is, my grandparents have been together for 50 years, and they only got married about a decade ago. I don't think you should put a timeline on marriage. It could be 5 or 10 years before you can be ready for marriage. My stance was, if you don't know after 3 years that you want to marry me or not, then don't waste my time. I see so many people where the guy just leads her on for years and years. Plus I want to own a home one day and I do not want to buy a home with my boyfriend. I do not think it is legally wise to do so. Marriage is important in that if something were to happen to either of us, death, medical emergency, you need insurance etc., then the spouse is usually covered. So I told him you have 3 years to propose, I don't care if it's with a ring pop, when I plan to buy a house. My family also pressures both of us. They have somewhat traditional views about commitment and monogamy. He took this as an ultimatum but said he understood. My fiancé proposed to me last Tuesday. I was ecstatic, relieved, elated, but I also felt the same. I told him I am marrying you without my family's approval. The only thing I expect to change is that our tax returns will increase and we have a bundle of joy. I am 35 weeks pregnant. That being said, I had this beautiful engagement ring for more than a week. I had been taking it off to wash my hands and then apply lotion. I find the feeling of metal on my wet skin to be very annoying and unnatural. I didn't even notice that I didn't have the ring on until yesterday, when I came home and he asked where's your ring. I immediately started searching for it among my work things but I knew I'd left it in the office. I hoped that no one would take it, like a coworker or a cleaning service person. I went back to work, but the place is locked after hours and I knew management would just say can't. You look tomorrow? Before I went home, he called me to check how things went and to see where I was. I sort of told him that I was out, but hearing his voice made me want to cry. I stopped by my godmother's house, whom I'm close with. I was hysterical, afraid that he'd break up with me. She told me that the ring is a material thing, and that I should be more careful, but I don't think he will break up with you if he's as good a man as we think he is. I got home last night, and before I went to bed, I reiterated how sorry I was and how devastated and ashamed I felt at losing something so important in a little over a week. He said not to worry, he has a solution, and that he's not mad, which I found hard to believe but it could have been my own guilt. I went in today and checked my desk but couldn't find it. I asked management if they could check the security cameras, and they said that they have the ring. I was ecstatic. I texted my fiancé and he called me. I took a breath of fresh air, I was so relieved. Then he said, want to know my solution if you couldn't find it? I said sure and he said, if you couldn't find it, I would have said no problem but we would go back to being boyfriend and girlfriend. And that ultimatum you gave me? It would be a moot point. I would have proposed on my time, whether it's 5 years or 10 years down the line. I was a bit speechless. He continued, because it would have shown me that you're not ready. Besides it costing lots of money, it's a symbol of our love, and you lost it in a week which is crazy. Also, it's really embarrassing, because when the people we've told ask where's the ring, what would I say? What would you say? And no, I wouldn't let you replace it. We have the baby to think about, and besides, that's not the point. I make more than he does and could give him the money back immediately, though I dip into my emergency fund. I asked him, could we maybe compromise, and I get a tattoo and wear it for special occasions? He said no and wouldn't really say much else, just he had to get ready for work. I know what he's thinking. Like, here I spent all this money and she doesn't even want to wear it. I also see his point and just don't know what to do. I still feel ashamed that I can't even keep up with something so important. My wife of 20 years recently passed away, leaving me heartbroken and depressed. But I just found a nasty secret of hers that has totally changed my perspective on everything. My wife passed away recently. The end of her life was a torment for her, and I almost relieved when she passed, as she no longer had to suffer. What took her was a sudden heart attack. It may have been coming for some time, but we passed off the symptoms as related to other issues she had, such as bipolar or schizophrenia. So I met her at a conference when we were both in our early 20s. We lived in different states, and after a few months of phone conversations she came to visit me for a long romantic weekend. While she was out here, she got a call from her sister telling her that her family have disowned her due to her choice of being with a black man. So she flew home, packed her stuff, and moved in with me. I have never met her family. I talked to her mom once briefly when I called her before that fateful weekend, and answered the phone when her sister called at the end of the weekend. We married a few years later, and struggled financially the entire time. Her various illnesses caused her to lose jobs, and my time away from work to assist her during her various illnesses severely impacted my career. I loved her, but she was very much a burden. I would have probably left her years ago, but the fact that she was estranged from her entire family made it feel like she had no one else but me. If I left her, she would be all alone in this world. She wasn't a lonely shut-in. She picked up friends easily, and her social life far eclipsed my own. We were never able to have children and were never financially stable enough to medically see why, get IVF or adopt. For all of these issues, I still loved her dearly. We were never unfaithful to each other. I suspected there was something about her family or the me being black, something that she was keeping from me, but any time I tried to raise the issue with her, she shut me down about it, asking me to not bring it up. Upon her death, I felt obligated to tell her family. I had no way to contact them. I know both of her parents had died. I knew enough that I found the obituaries before her death, but both deaths were years after she told me it happened. I encouraged her to try to reconnect with her family, but she was vehement that they were toxic, conniving, and manipulative people that could not be trusted. A friend of mine offered to help contact them using the info in her parents' obituaries. She found my wife's family and told them the news. They talked to her and dropped a bombshell on her. My wife had a son. He is in his late 20s, so he was probably a toddler when I met her. She never mentioned him to me the entire time we were together. All I know is a name and that he was raised by her parents. It turns out her parents never had a problem with me being black. She made that up for all those years to hide the fact that Sher had a kid who she neglected for all of his life. I am talking to one of her sisters tomorrow morning to find out all of the details. I am torn because this is clearly a chapter of her life she never wanted me to know for whatever reason. It also doesn't seem like something a woman so loving and generous of her time with other people and children would do. Perhaps there are circumstances around the child's birth that were why she walked away.